I didn't know that motherhood takes a long time to get into. Some women truly were born to become mothers, and when they do have a baby, it's just so natural and so beautiful. And I love that. I didn't have that. I was very hard on myself in the beginning because I just thought that it's going to be this immediate click. It's just going to happen. And it didn't happen for me. It took me a long time to be okay with that. Your journey might look different. You need to embrace it and respect it and give yourself the time that you need to really learn what works for you. The second thing about motherhood that I didn't know is okay, let's do this. Welcome back to Not Alone. This is another solo episode because I'm a Virgo and we did not go through all the questions that I get quite often. So I want to take an opportunity to really take these solos and make them into conversation and where I'm able to actually expand and give context to my answers. I find that I'm a bit limited on Instagram or on other kind of short form platforms because I just give a snippet and then, you have like more that you want to add and then it just becomes very like diluted messaging. So let's sit down, let's talk about motherhood, about relationship, also business, because I did get a few questions about that. I have to tell you, the solo episode that came out last month, I answered a question that spoke on kind of the idea of a partner that's not really stepping into the role of father, of his, becoming a father. And I opened up and shared how I had these expectations of Gary. And I've realized as I matured and as a relationship matured and as our kids got older, that I gave him an opportunity and I really gave grace to his own journey of becoming a father. And I'm really proud of myself about it. But the snippet that was shared on social media, because again, it's only short form, I mentioned how it takes longer than 9 months to become a father. By the way, same for motherhood. It takes more than 9 months to become a mother. And that, in my relationship with Gary, again, my experience, he wasn't as involved as I wanted him to be. Again, based on the expectations that I had on him, I was building this resentment towards him. And when we sat down and talked about it, he told me, by the way, this is a recap of everything I spoke about, but he told me that he will get me the support that I need, but he can be involved as he can be, if that makes sense. And it's not going to match my expectations, but he's going to outdo himself when the kids are older. Now, I want to highlight because I got so many comments about like, oh, I'm not waiting 6, 7 years for my husband to step up. Oh, I'm not waiting for him to become a present father. If you have a partner that's literally not there and gives you an excuse of, I'll be back in 7 years, yes, that is not partnership. But you also need to move within a relationship and within a marriage with grace and meet the other person where they're at. And that happens when you have an open communication. But again, you also realize that that person needs a little bit more time than you. Now, we had the privilege, Gary was working to support our family and to build a business and support his mother and all the things. And we were able to hire help. If I did not have help, that would have been a completely different conversation. He wouldn't have a choice. He had the privilege. So there's so many different scenarios that happen within a marriage or relationship when you become parents. But my biggest message was for us women, we're kind of thrown into this role as mothers. And again, it does take us time to grow into it. But some of it really comes more naturally. And, the taking care of and the attending and the baths and the diaper changes, yes, it's not necessarily what we want to do, but it's something that really is, in a way, our love language. And I found that for Gary, it wasn't. And he didn't look at it as quality times. My biggest message was to really sit down with your partner and to really move with grace in the most difficult period of your life when you have young children and really see who can do what and who can pick up what, because this 50-50 is just really unrealistic. And I opened up and shared our experience so other people can see that it's not so black and white and there's so many ways to do it. And you don't have to adhere to the rules, quotation marks, of society, of what we've been shown. So I'm going to wrap up that whole conversation because I feel like I've been going back and forth in DMs and in comments, and there were so many women that got triggered. And that's okay. And I found myself trying to justify it. And I was like, whoa, what are you doing? It worked for me. It worked for my husband. It worked for our kids. It's all good. Again, this is a risk I take when I share things that are happening within our household. But I do find that with so many other DMs that I got and so many other messages I got of women being like, thank you so much for showing a different angle and a different perspective. And again, it's not an excuse for men to look at that clip and be like, oh, I'm not ready to become a fight. All of that has to be thought through before, of course, having kids, but it's just another perspective on marriage. So let's continue talking about motherhood because, as I mentioned, motherhood took me a long time to get into. I was under this impression that once you become pregnant, this maternal instinct is just blooming inside of you, and then the baby's out, and you're just like, the world makes sense now. And it wasn't the case for me. I was also very young. I was 22 when I had Jake. So I was still in kind of on my journey of becoming my own self identity wise. So it was a little bit different for me. It took me time to find my rhythm and my place and understanding what it motherhood means to me. You know what I mean? And it took me also quite a bit to find myself outside of motherhood because that was very important for me. I think because of my age, I had this FOMO of not missing out on partying and like all of those things because I've done all of that. It was more on like missing out on my own identity developing without getting fully immersed and drowned. I'm using very like big words and maybe a little morbid words, but drowned in like the motherhood kind of role. To me, that was the biggest kind of bounce back. It wasn't the physical, it wasn't all of that. It was more of, am I going to give up on myself and my own journey? Which was very interesting. I got a question. Help me find myself after 5 years of being a stay at home mom. I feel left out everywhere. And I totally understand. As I mentioned, because I had this fear of not being able to go through my own journey while I'm also developing my identity as a mother, I was really grasping at anything that gave me an opportunity to learn more about myself. If it was hobbies and different, friend groups or just anything. And it was very messy, it was very chaotic. I didn't give myself grace to go through it. So I handled my own kind of set of challenges, but with this question of finding yourself after 5 years of being stay-at-home mom, I would have give the advice that I actually did just prematurely have done it when I was a stay-at-home mom, which was again trying to really find myself through different activities and give yourself the time to learn this new identity and who you are, because being at home for 5 years really disconnects you from who you are, but that is only the only memory you have. You know what I mean? So what I find a lot of women do, and myself included, was trying to kind of bounce back personality wise, the way I was just moving and doing and communicating. I was trying to go back to who I was before having children, which was a huge mistake because motherhood changes you. The years change you. You become a different person. Your values change. You have to figure out what are your new boundaries because now it's not just about you. So it really requires you now to kind of sit with this unknown identity that you have and go on this journey of like, who am I? So the place that this woman feels, the one that messaged me about it and sent me the DM, is totally normal. You feel left out, but you also feel like unfamiliar to yourself. So, again, it's this feeling of being lost, but that's exactly where you're supposed to be. And the easiest ways to start learning about yourself is to immersing yourself in things that are interesting to you, having conversations about it. There's actually so many mothers that go through it, feel the same, and are on the same kind of path as you. And I think that having that support system is crucial. So there is no necessarily formula, it's more about taking action. I remember for me, it was going and getting my nutrition degree, diploma, not degree. I didn't go to university, it was a college. For me was also finding friends that are not necessarily just mothers, like do different things. That also inspired me, made me question, ask a lot of things, ask questions for myself. Like, is that something that I would want to do? So just kind of exposure gave me a better indication of which direction to go. But it's a process because, again, you are learning and building a whole new you. So doing it with patience and humility is key. Also, one thing that you will have to learn is to become a little more selfish because a stay at home mom, it's the hardest job in the world. And it's a job where there are no days off, there's no time off, and there's really no opportunity for you to be like, no, this is my time now. So, as you step out into the world, it will require you to teach yourself first, but then others about the boundaries and about the time that you need for yourself and becoming selfish. I think that's the hardest thing for mothers to learn, to be selfish. We hear all these things all the time. You can pour from an empty cup and take time for yourself and da da da. But actually practicing it and making it your day to day is extremely, extremely difficult, but very important. So remember that. My next question was your biggest moment as a mother that you never forget. You know what? I don't have one big moment. I have moments when my kids are out in the world and when they are able to be assertive, when they show up as their true self, when they're not scared to voice their opinions. When I see that, I am very, very proud. I grew up in an environment where there was a lot of discipline, but discipline that was led by fear. A lot of do this. Why? Because I told you so. And I'm really trying to change that because I want my kids to become sovereign adults. I was actually listening to this one podcast that blew my mind, by the way. It was with Naval and with Tim Ferriss. And there is this one guy who's a doctor, and he wrote the book The Sovereign Child. It speaks on this philosophy of teaching your children to really become their own person and let them lead the way. So when they reach the age of 18 and now are expected to make good decisions and be responsible, they're not thrown into the world completely disoriented because up until 18, you very much told them what to do. So that made so much sense to me. And obviously, it looks different for everyone else, but I've realized that we do that in our house. We do give an opportunity for our children to really manage themselves and be responsible for their words. And there's a lot of mess ups and there's a lot of learnings. But if before I looked at it more of we're not strict enough, now when they are showing up and they're decisive and they know who they are and they stand for something and that they truly believe in and they are willing to fight for it, even if it takes years off of my life, I respect that. To me, it's those moments that make me proud as a mom, and I cherish them very much. And I hope when they become adults and are thrown into this independent life, they will be like, oh, I got it. Like I know how to do this, no problem. So that's kind of what I pride myself. And honestly, Gary, like both of us, we pride ourselves in that. Next question: what didn't you know about motherhood? Any recommendations for those who are thinking about having a baby? What I didn't know about motherhood, literally everything. But the first one, which I mentioned before, was I didn't know that motherhood takes a long time to get into. And for everyone, it's different. Some women truly were born to become mothers. And when they do have a baby, it's like just so natural and so beautiful. And I love that. I didn't have that. I didn't think about becoming a mother. Obviously, I was also very young, but it's not something that was kind of like the biggest destination in my life that I aspired to. Yeah, I was very hard on myself in the beginning because I just thought that it's going to be this immediate click and it's just going to happen. And it didn't happen for me. It took me a long time to be okay with that. So that's the first thing that I didn't know. And I tell that to every woman that either considers to get pregnant or is pregnant, I always say, like, your journey might look different and you need to embrace it and respect it and give yourself the time that you need to really learn what works for you. So that's the number one. The second thing about motherhood that I didn't know is how much it will humble you and how much work you'll need to do to be the mother that you want to be. And the work doesn't happen with the kids, the work happens within you. Kids are like the sink or swim of therapy, I would say, because these humans is like the most important thing in the world for you, and you want to do it differently than the way you were raised, or maybe the same, and you want to provide them everything that you can and not mess it up. So it's very anxiety driven, but it really helps when you are able to sit with yourself and really dig deep into your own belief system, because there's a lot of things you need to rewire. And I really didn't think that that's what's going to happen. No one told me that. It didn't come in the manual. No manual came actually, which is good. So I would say those two things were the kind of biggest lessons that I was like, oh, wow, okay, cool. But thankfully now there's enough people that are talking about it where, people take the time to be like, okay, am I ready for this journey to begin? What changed your perspective on parenting? I mentioned it a couple of times actually, but there were a couple of things changed my perspective. The first one was that book that I read, New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, speaking about the roles of motherhood and parenting. I really loved that. It was a tiny little paragraph, but it just changed the way how I position myself in my own life and how I found a way to kind of immerse all this parenting, but also these other aspects of myself. The other thing that changed my perspective is that podcast that I was talking about, The Sovereign Child. That was really really eye-opening. Again, you can do it to different kind of degrees. Some of it is completely, out there and children are running and making the rules, but you find, what works for you. But that one really made sense and empowered me as a parent to give more freedom to my kids to really learn the mistakes, understands the why, let them speak and find their voice. And even if it's very, difficult for us as parents to kind of digest. Another thing about parenting is listening to Gary, honestly, and I'll tell you why. Because I grew up with a so-called single mother. And when I say so-called, because I did had a stepfather present, but it didn't really feel like it. And then for my brother, he left his father at 10 years old, right? So my stepfather is his father, but my mother moved with my brother to Canada when he was 10. So I saw how my brother developed under the single mother kind of household. And what it showed me is that boys need fathers in their lives. I mean, girls need fathers too, but you need that father figure. And there are things that I won't understand that Gary's trying to teach the boys that I have to surrender and trust him to do whatever he needs to do, because he went through it. He went through this growing into the man that he is, maturing, seeing the world from that point of view. And I think a lot of the times as mothers, we just really don't give enough room or space for our partners to take over. So that was also something that I've learned how to do. And I'm so grateful for that, because I had to be okay and accept the fact that I won't be able to raise men but the way they should be raised. But I have an amazing husband that I consider to be an amazing man that can do that. So give him the opportunity to do that and not like fight my own urges as a mother, because there's room for nurturing and there's room for lessons, hard learned lessons that I just don't have in me to teach them. So that was also a big thing on parenting. And I think that it's important to mention. I mean, my brother came out great, but I do see that if there was a man in his life, a father figure in his life, it would have helped a lot. And it would have helped my mother a lot, because you can't be both the man and the woman, when you're raising a child. If you have the privilege not to be, you have to really give room for it. So that's also a big thing that I've learned about parenting as a mother to three boys. Let's transition into relationships as I'm speaking about Gary. I think this is a great segue. So the first question is, when you were little, did you have your father's last name? I'm a solo mom and I totally admire your mom. Thank you. I did have my father's name. Actually, my mother also never changed her last name. She got married with my biological father when she was 18 and had me at 19, and we all carry his last name. Actually, my brother as well, and that's not even his father. But my mother wanted all of us to have her last name. So that's interesting. But as a solo mother, I applaud you. I think being a mother in general is extremely difficult in the world, but also being a single mother is just a whole other level. So this every time I meet somebody who's kind of in that journey is I applaud her. Another question about my father. Apologies in advance if it's too personal. I never catch you mentioning your dad. Is he alive? So you never hear about my dad because I didn't know him until I was 26 years old, and that was actually the first video I posted on YouTube. One of the first ones that really got me an amazing community. And a lot of people could relate to it was when I traveled when I was 26. I traveled with my mother to Russia to meet my biological father for the first time. So as I mentioned before, they got married at 18. They had me at 19. At 21, my mother moved to Israel with me as a baby, and it was just her and I. And he was out of the picture, and he was, they were very young. He was just never around or present. And at 26, I had the opportunity to go back and meet him. And I didn't really want it to, I didn't really care to, but Gary made a really good point. He said, you never know if you'll have the opportunity again. You might as well. So I decided to take the chance and to meet him. And he's a nice guy, a very simple guy. It wasn't anything crazy, really. I was very emotionless about it in a very Russian, Eastern European way. To me, it was more of like, I just wanted to see him, and actually, Jake looks like him, which is kind of crazy. I just wanted to see that side of the family. But yeah, after that, he tried to stay in touch, but I am the kind of person that I didn't feel that his presence was missing in my life. And that's it. I said, thank you for your genetics. It's great. I appreciate it very much. I wish you the best. He has kids, so I actually have like half siblings in Russia. But again, this is like I didn't want to open that Pandora's box, because it's just an endless bit. So you don't hear about him because he's not part of my life. He's alive though. What are your three most important relationship tips? Oh, that's interesting because I feel like I would answer this differently for every stage of my relationship, of a relationship. But I believe that communication is very important. It's very important to be honest but kind because a lot of the resentment and issues start when you kind of suppress certain emotions and certain things because you don't want to hurt your partner. So short term, it's fine, but long term is where it becomes damaging. So that's why I very much appreciate direct communication, and I try to take out everything that I have stored in me to make sure that I don't walk around with this like feeling that I've been treated unkindly or something was unfair or I was overlooked. Like whatever it is, I always communicate to Gary about it. I'll give you a great example. On Valentine's Day, he didn't buy me flowers. I made a funny video on Instagram of like arranging like imaginary bouquet, and we kind of laughed about it, and I didn't say anything, made it kind of into a joke. And you know what? I walked around for like a day with this feeling of just like sadness. Like, well, where were my flowers? I didn't get any flowers. So I came to Gary and I asked him, have I done or said anything to you that made you think that I wouldn't appreciate flowers on Valentine's Day? And he was kind of caught off guard, but he's like, what do you mean? I've noticed you didn't bring me a bouquet of flowers. And I wonder if I said something that made you believe that that's the right thing to do. And he said, well, a few years ago, I would bring you flowers every year. And a few years ago, you kind of mentioned to me that you don't really care for it. I stopped doing it because you didn't care for it. And I said, okay, that's fair. I don't remember it, but makes sense. And I told him, you know what? Now at this point, I want flowers. Like it's important to me. Those little signal signs and gestures, it matters to me now. He's like, okay, noted, no problem. Like I'll make sure that you get flowers. And I was like, okay, thank you. That was great. Of course, I cried. I was emotional. I was also on my period. So that was great. But again, communicated it and kind of moved on with my day, where otherwise I would have kind of gaslight myself and just be like, "Ah, it's not really important, whoever, whatever, doesn't matter." That's why I'm mentioning this like honest communication. And these are uncomfortable conversations to have, like you go about your day, you have things to do, you're like, I don't want to sit and like open up now and make this whole thing, because it's just flowers for Valentine's Day. It's very uncomfortable and very annoying. But again, a well lived life and relationship is built out of those small moments, because it's aggregation of those conversations that you don't have that becomes into this whole big, resentment ball that then makes you do and say things that you'll regret after. So that's number one. The second thing, which I opened with, is this idea that you have to kind of put blinders on what you see and what society signals to you, what is like the right way, and green flag and red flag and because it is so personal. Your only way to find out what's a red flag for you and what's a green flag for you is by actually learning about yourself, about your boundaries, how you care to be loved, how you want to be loved, and then learning how to teach others to do it. Thank you very much. Because, as the more mature I get and the older I get, I realize that we all come from our own stories and our own scenarios in our own heads. And it's not black and white. And being able to filter the influence from the outside that tells you how things need to be done really helps you in your own relationship and helps you to build your own formula to your relationship. And that's kind of where it is. It's between you and your partner. It can look different and it should look different because you are different people. So that's number two. And then number three would be investing in yourself and your own development. I think it's so important for the health of your relationship. I had this conversation with Gary. We were diving into the whole topic of why men cheat. I'll take the opportunity to get like an honest man's perspective on different things, because, it's very easy to sit woman to woman and just like nod your head and dive into everything. We usually are all on the same page, but getting an honest, unfiltered opinion of a man is very, very refreshing, especially in today's time and age where we don't have a lot of spaces where those kind of conversations are being held. So I appreciate him being able to be his direct self. And when we sat down and talked about this whole idea of cheating, kind of dawned on me. I was saying how we were really taught that everything leads up to marriage, and then you become this unit, just the two of you now. And you start working on your relationship. From now on, it's all about your relationship and your partnership. And you think that it's this thing that you do together. But when you get married, with the years, you actually learn that a successful marriage is actually a very much of a individual work on oneself, because it's very easy to project all the shit and all the sadness and all the dissatisfaction that you have with yourself on your partner and then blame it on them. It is a very much of a self, development journey that you have to embrace and you have to constantly work on, which is yourself, in order to have a happy and fulfilled relationship. So those are my three tips. That was a very long answer, but I feel very good about those. Those are three very important relationship tips. Okay, next question is, how do you deal with jealousy for other women towards your husband if you are jealous? I'm not jealous. I'm not jealous at all. Sometimes Gary makes a remark. He's like, I wish you would be more jealous, but I'm just not. I don't know what it is. I know that I have an amazing husband. He's obviously also in the public eye. He gets messages or whatever, but I trust him with my eyes closed. Like, I can't even explain it. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, to me, if I would have been in any other position of like having a husband, a partner, the father of my children, that I have to think twice about other women, oh my God, like I don't have the mental capacity. Like, we have so many things to do and achieve and raise these kids, and I don't have no space for that. So I guess for me, I was always under that idea where it's not something that I care for to have in my life. I think I chose a man that very much made me feel extremely secure. It never made me think twice about other women or anything like that. So that was very important for me because I grew up in an environment where there was so much infidelity that I was absolutely like, that's a no for me. Relationship advice about differences, vulnerability on hard periods. I think I answered it with my kind of relationship tips. I know it's extremely important, very healthy to have differences. And then it's very healthy and suggested to also have strong communication in order to build those bridges between, the differences. And when you are in those situations is when you can build a remarkable, like extraordinary relationship. Because when you are with a person that you guys are on the same page at all times, agree on all things, it's very much not preparing you for the hard times. So take the difficult times as an opportunity to really test out how strong you can get as a couple and how good your communication can get. And you'll be surprised to see how empowering it is once you are on the other side. So, all of that is important, and vulnerability is extremely important. But you also have to trust your partner with your vulnerability, which is very difficult. And it takes a long time. For some people, it takes a long time to do it. But the faster you can learn how to be vulnerable with your significant other, the easier it will become to find those solutions to whatever you go through. Next question is how to attract the right partner. What do you do to get into the right relationship? You do you. You really, really do you, because whatever energy that you ooze when you're out into the world, like that's what attracts the partner. So if before, I think about back in the day, the Cosmo magazine would be like 5 ways to find the right guy, or, how to attract the right partner, and all these like tips. It's all such nonsense because it doesn't matter how hard you're going to work to try to find the right partner. It all comes back to you. You need to believe and to feel like you deserve the partner that you want. That's two different things, right? Like you can have in your head, this is kind of how I think about manifestation as well. You can manifest something, but if you don't believe that you deserve it, then it doesn't matter what you're manifesting. So your job is to understand what you want. Ask yourself, who am I need to become? Like what version of myself do I need to be in order to get that right partner? And when I say which version, is not like play a role, but if you want someone that is hardworking and like have all these qualities, you have to become that first in order to attract that. You know what I mean? That's the work you have to do. And then you have to truly believe that you deserve it. And for a lot of people, that's the hardest that's the biggest challenge. So that's what I would do if I were you, kind of in that place. Again, like I mentioned, the success of a relationship is a kind of individual project. So you have to start doing the work on yourself right now. And that's it. And trust timing because universe has a plan, okay? What moment or how did you know that Gary was the one for you? I get that question a lot, and I find it difficult to answer it properly. I was on this podcast a couple of months ago, and I was asked like, "Oh, you got engaged after 2 months. How did you know?" And I was trying to explain that love is a beautiful aspect of a relationship, but it's not everything. And for every person, there's stronger and bigger values that they look for. And I feel like it didn't come off right for me because the way it sounded is like, well, I felt security, so I was, but that's not what I was trying to say. And I'm going to answer it now, where for me, there was the attraction, of course. There was this feeling, there was this like, I want to explore what this is. But there was something so much deeper because those other feelings I've had before, maybe not like this kind of feeling of like this is it, but I felt those before, the butterflies and all the things, right? But what I felt with Gary when I met him was so much deeper. And when I say security, it's not even security. It's this, that feeling when you come home and you just like take a breath and you just feel safe and you feel protected and you feel at ease. That's how it felt like for me. So it was so much bigger than love. Love is important again, but when you are in a marriage, love looks different. And there's years where it's just, I don't know, it can become so, when there's babies and you go through all these hard periods, like love can't necessarily sustain everything. But this feeling of just like I'm home and this is the most safe space I've ever been in, and I can be myself and I can be protected and supported and empowered. That's what it was for me. So just the feeling that I'm beside a person that will be that home for me. And no matter what earthquakes and disasters gonna come our way, I can always rely on this foundation and this person. To me, that was the most important value that I was looking for because I didn't see it around me. Like at all, actually. I didn't see it. So the fact that I was able to, and I didn't recognize it intellectually, it was a body experience. It was physically felt in my body. And thank God that I was wise enough to take it as a sign because at 20 years old, I mean, you really don't listen to your body. So that's what it was for me. Easiest decision ever. Question is, what do you think about staying friends with friends who cheat? I don't love it. I mean, I personally find cheating a cowardly act, especially at this point in my life. I'm very protective of the people that I'm around. I'm protective of my energy and the influence that other people have on me. So to me, a person that cheats is someone that cannot face their own challenges. And I have a lot of compassion towards people, don't get me wrong. But if it's something that's done over and over again, that's just like the character of that person, then I don't want that around me. Because again, I find it to be very, just like a cowardly thing to do. Now, if you have a friend that, within their relationship, one cheated one time or whatever, gone through infidelity, that's a whole other thing. Because again, it's so much deeper. There's so many, it's just a symptom. But if it's someone that's just in a relationship and, you go out and she or he cheats constantly, I just think that it's not what you want. And again, you have to be so and intentional with the words that you say, the conversations that you have, the people that are around you, because you're signaling what it is that you want in your life. Honestly, I truly believe that. So I'm very brutal when it comes to that kind of situations. Let's move to a little bit of content creation and business questions. Okay, let's start with the first one. What advice would you give to someone who wants to start their own business? The advice that I would give is to really just be very curious and know that it's a journey. It will take time. You will fail at a lot of things that will become very valuable lessons. You have to really bet on yourself. This is being an entrepreneur and starting your own business is very much of a self belief type of test because sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. It's so glorified when you look on social media and on other media, but it is very difficult. So you have to have this like unwavering belief in yourself and have the support system around you. If it's a friend, if it's your parents, if it's your partner, that could be that when you just don't believe in yourself. So I would say that's the best advice that I would give you. Of course, there's little small ones, depends on the business you want to get into, a lot of kind of technical things, but I would say that that's the foundation of whatever it is that you want to do. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you were first starting as a podcaster and influencer? I wish I knew that it takes so long to find your voice. Again, we are seeing the highlights of so many people, and you already see people succeeding right off the bat, but you don't see a lot of the years that it took them to show up and find their voice and understand who they are and who they want to be to the world. And I was very critical of myself when I started. I wanted everything to be perfect. That's literally my like biggest disadvantage in life, this perfectionism that I'm working on. Okay, I'm trying to move from being type A to type B. It was that. It was just really learning and understanding that to be excellent, you need repetition and you need time. And that's really it. And I will never forget, I tell the story often when I called my team when we were talking about the podcast, and I'm like, why is this podcast not like this? And why am I not like that? And why don't I speak like that? Why I feel like I'm not good as an interviewer? And someone asked me the question like, oh, who do you think is like so great? And I was listening to this one podcast, and I mentioned the podcast, and I think it was Ritual or something. Yeah, it was Ritual. And I look at the episode and I see there's like number 872, and it hit me. He's been recording like episodes for years. He's on episode 872, and I'm sitting here. I have the audacity. In Hebrew, it's called chutzpah. I have the chutzpah to sit here and look at my episode number 25 and ask myself, why am I not as good as this person that's on episode 872? So it really snapped me back into reality, and it reminded me that I gotta do the work. I gotta do the heavy lifting. I gotta show up. And I can't even look at anybody else at that level until I've done the rounds. You know what I mean? Until I've reached that number. So that was for me a big aha moment. And that's how I look at everything at this point. When I pick it up, not only do I have a student mindset, but I have this mindset of like, I gotta do the rounds, I gotta do the repetitions, I gotta build the muscle. So I wish I knew that, because I was very critical of myself and just kind of assumed that I'm not naturally talented at this. What the hell does that even mean? It doesn't exist. Can you share more about your thoughts on failure and why you decided to celebrate it? What was the failure? Okay, so this was a very viral moment for me, a very big moment for me personally as well. I shot a video of me popping champagne and celebrating my first big failure. So if you haven't been with me for that long, but I used to have apparel line. It was called, first it was Leah, which is my Hebrew name. Then we changed it to Vari. Then we changed it to Valeria. It went through so many different cycles. It was a business that started off very organically, very effortlessly, and then it just became bigger and bigger and bigger, and we were trying to navigate it on our own. We didn't have any partners. We really fly to Portugal to our factory. We tried so many different suppliers. Like, it was, when I tell you it was a mess, it was a mess. Now you look at people, celebrities, influencers, whatever it is, have all these like beauty lines and apparel lines, and it looks like so fun and sexy. It is the worst industry. That and hospitality to me are the two worst industries ever. And I didn't know that. So when we picked up this idea of building an apparel brand, we didn't know what we're getting ourselves into. We tried. I had to come to terms with the fact that I did everything I could possibly do, and it still didn't work. We were selling, we were making money, but it wasn't what I needed it to be to justify the amount of time and effort that it required out of me. And I really had to put my ego aside to come to a place where I realized that, hey, I can't do this. Like, this is not for me. And when I mentioned prior that you need to have the belief in yourself, you also be very honest with yourself, and honest with yourself, not in like a way where you're downplaying or gaslighting yourself, but in a way where you truly can be objective. And is it objective or subjective? I need to ask ChatGPT. What's the difference between objective and subjective?
Objective means something that is based on facts and can be proven or verified.
Okay, great. That's what I meant. Thank you. Always say thank you to ChatGPT, okay? You need to be objective with your business and what you are capable of doing. So at some point, after pushing myself and encouraging myself and having so many different swaps in roles, and, we really try to figure it out, I had to kind of call quits. And that was my first big failure because it was a public one. It's one thing when you start a business and you're unknown and nobody's watching, whatever, you can really have the luxury of time to make a lot of mistakes because it doesn't affect really anything else. But for me, I already had my media company and, eyeballs on me, and I had to kind of go through it in a public eye. It was very hard for me, but it was also so empowering. It was so empowering to pop that champagne and call quits and share the lessons that I've shared in that post, to speak on the experience of really coming to terms with the fact that it just wasn't good enough. And that's okay. Like, that's okay to admit being able to admit that I did everything I could do and that's it. And there's a time where you need to shut a chapter that just won't serve you anymore. So it was a huge relief. It was very humbling in the best way possible. I loved it. I remember the next day I woke up and when you break up with like a toxic boyfriend, because I was carrying it for so long within me, this like continue to push and we can do this and we're gonna have this breakthrough. So the next day when I woke up and I just felt this lightness, I'm like, oh, this was the right decision. So that was very special and powerful. And my views changed since then since that moment on failure. I welcome it and I really cherish when that happens because it truly made me look at myself in a different way, recognizing my weaknesses and my strengths, and just learning how to navigate these emotions and how to navigate myself as a business person. So it was extremely empowering, and I recommend everybody to fail once in a while. Teaches you Failure teaches you so much more than success. So that was the biggest lesson. What are you looking for in a person who wants to work with you? It's a great question. I really appreciate, I mean, for different roles, it's different things, but I really appreciate when people take initiative. I cherish people that can look around and do things without being asked to do them. I cherish people that operating from a place of like, I'm going to show up and do the best that I can do. Work ethic is extremely important. I really love when people have a sense of humor and they don't take everything seriously. They don't take themselves too seriously. I think that's important. So having that, perspective is very encouraged, but with a work ethic. Otherwise, it doesn't work. If you were to start a new brand and were not an influencer, how would you create a community? I will become an influencer. And when we say influencer, I think that we all have such a specific image of what it is. You don't actually have to twirl in dresses or whatever, but you have to start building your personal brand. There's actually a few founders now that already build successful businesses. These are products that are in Sephora, in like different places, like very known places, that are now reverse engineering it and building their personal brand because they understand that the value of their business will be tremendously higher if they have a strong personal brand and they're able to tell the story of the products if they have a strong personal brand. So I don't think that at this point, at this time, this age, you can avoid not building your personal brand. That's why we started Creator Method. And, we didn't start it because we want everyone to be influencers, but we want to empower people to build an asset for themselves and then decide what they want to do with that asset, right? If you have a business or a product to sell, you can. If you have real estate that you want to sell, you can. Like you have services, you have anything that you want. Once you have a personal brand attached to it and you are building a community, it doesn't have to be a huge community, you're good. You're putting your messaging, you're sharing your values with people out there. And then it's just, this amazing word of mouth situation that continues to fuel your business and your personal brand. So I don't think there's any way around it. What you need to do is to start. So a community and a personal brand, it's, I would say, a very important aspect of any business that you want to build. This was some points about business and content creation. I want to finish this solo with just a sincere thank you for sending your questions and for asking questions. This was very cozy. I'm sitting in my living room drinking my saffron latte. So I loved having this conversation with you. Thank you so much for sending the questions. I hope that next solo will be able to focus a little bit more on certain things. I'm gonna start writing topics that I want to cover that will kind of ignite certain conversations. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for listening. This was lovely as always. I really appreciate you taking the time sending the questions and asking the questions, and we'll do this again soon. Love ya. It's very grayish and pouring rain outside, so this was very cozy for me. Have an amazing day. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't miss my newest episode right here. And if you're listening to the podcast on Apple or Spotify, please go and leave a review with your biggest takeaway. I love reading your thoughts. They inspire me. So if you have any suggestions for guests or topics, you can leave them in the comment section. And always remember, you are not alone.